AITA for refusing to help my parents after they ruined our family business to benefit my brother? I'm Cameron, 38, and I run a logistics company with just over 150 employees. We handle the supply chain, warehousing, and distribution for a mix of manufacturers, retailers, and e-commerce businesses. When I started, it was just me, a rented office the size of a closet, a wobbly desk that shifted every time I leaned on it, and a phone that rang far less than I would have liked. I had no investors, no family support, and certainly no partners to share the load. It was just me, grinding through calls, learning the hard way how contracts really work, and cleaning up my own messes while trying to keep the lights on. Today, we have multiple warehouses, experienced staff who know their jobs inside and out, and clients who trust us with millions of dollars in merchandise. I sign the paychecks for over 150 people every 2 weeks, and it's a responsibility I don't take lightly. A single mistake on my part could ripple through the entire company and affect everyone's livelihood. I've worked too hard to get here to let anyone mess it up. And then there's my younger brother, Logan, 34. Logan is 4 years younger than me, but to hear my parents talk, you'd think he's still a kid who just needs a little more guidance before he makes it big. He's the quintessential enabled guy. He always has a new business plan that sounds brilliant when he's explaining it over dinner, but falls apart the second he has to actually manage it. Over the years, he's tried everything: a boutique clothing brand, a third-wave coffee cart, a digital marketing agency, an interior design consultancy, even a luxury lifestyle advising business that mostly involved telling people how to spend money they didn't have. None of them lasted more than a few months, and every time one collapsed, my parents were there to say, "It's not his fault, it just wasn't the right time," or "He learned so much, the next one will work." My parents owned a small hardware store, the kind of place that had been a neighborhood fixture forever. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. That store was their safety net for decades. It paid their bills, built their savings, and kept them from worrying too much about retirement. And yes, sometimes it also served as an ATM for Logan's latest supposedly foolproof idea. This is where the unfairness becomes obvious. My parents have always treated Logan like a star in the making, just waiting for his big break, while I'm the one who handles things on his own and doesn't need help. My mother's favorite phrase, one I've been hearing since childhood, is, "He's the youngest. You're supposed to be his rock." And when she says rock, she doesn't mean being a good example. She means catching him when he falls, helping him whenever he needs it, and not complaining because I'm the older one and can handle it. When I launched my company, no one offered me a single cent. My father even told me I'd be better off choosing something stable, like a desk job with benefits, because he thought logistics was too risky. But when Logan decided to open a smoothie bar in a location with virtually no foot traffic, my parents dipped into their savings without a second thought. The business closed after 3 months, and the explanation was, well, the neighborhood just wasn't ready for that kind of concept. Yet, I've had my failures too. Early in my business, I lost a huge contract because I couldn't meet the delivery deadlines. I was understaffed and too stubborn to hire help. That mistake nearly sank me, but I had to figure it out on my own. No one showed up with a check or a safety net. My parents' reaction was basically, "Maybe this is a sign you should do something else." I remember one time, when I was about 25, Logan got it in his head to start a custom furniture business. He convinced my parents to help him buy tools, rent a small workshop, and even pay someone to teach him woodworking. The first week, he was all in, posting on social media, talking about orders rolling in. The second week, he decided the work was too repetitive and started showing up late, or not at all. By the third week, he had handed the keys over to his employee and was already talking about pivoting to home renovation consulting. That's Logan in a nutshell. He dives in head first, then loses interest the second it stops being fun. And through it all, my parents cheer him on. They never talk about accountability or perseverance. They just move on to the next idea as if the last one never happened. Meanwhile, I'm working myself to the bone to keep my company running like a well-oiled machine. Because in logistics, one mistake can cost thousands and ruin client relationships. My life is deadlines, supply chain schedules, inventory counts, and making sure everyone gets paid. Logan's life is dreaming of being his own boss, while skipping the part where you actually have to work. So when I heard he had the greatest business idea of his life, I already knew my parents would be on board. What I didn't know was how far they'd go this time, or that they'd drag my company into it in a way I couldn't ignore. It all started with a call from my mom, her tone completely casual, as if she were telling me about a new brand of laundry detergent she'd discovered. "We've decided to sell the hardware store," she said. For a second, I was silent, trying to process that. "Really? You're retiring?" "Not exactly," she replied, sounding oddly cheerful. "We're selling it to give the capital to Logan for his new venture with his friend Trent." I had to pull the phone away from my ear for a moment because my brain just stalled. That store wasn't just their job. It was their entire financial security. Without it, they had no income. And now they were telling me they were giving all that money to Logan, a guy whose longest-running business lasted 3 months. I asked the obvious question. "Wait, so you're giving him everything?" "Of course," my mom said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "It's an investment in his future." I laughed, trying not to lose my mind right then and there. "And I guess none of that is coming my way." There was a pause. "Why would it?" I stared at the wall for a second. "I don't know. Maybe because it's a family asset and you're giving the entire thing to one child like the other one doesn't exist." That's when my dad chimed in. He must have been sitting right there. "You already have your company. You're doing fine. This is about helping your brother get on his feet." I couldn't believe it. Helping him? He's had more chances than most people get in 3 lifetimes. And every time he burns through the cash, you just reload him like a video game character. Meanwhile, I never got a single dime from that store, even when I was starting my own business from scratch. My dad's tone turned icy. "Don't be greedy, Cameron. This isn't about money. It's about family." Ah, yes, the classic move. You question fairness, and suddenly you're the greedy one. My parents have a way of spinning things so fast it gives you whiplash. The conversation ended with one thing crystal clear. The sale was happening, whether I liked it or not. So they sold the store for $120,000. Every dollar went straight into Logan and his sketchy friend Trent's big idea, an idea so vague that to this day, I couldn't tell you what the business actually was. Something about integrated logistics consulting for import-export firms, which was frankly hilarious, since neither had any real-world experience in logistics, importing, or exporting. I just shook my head and told myself to let it go. They were going to learn the hard way, again. Except this time, their mistakes weren't just going to cost them. A few weeks later, I was reviewing warehouse reports when my operations manager, Monica, burst into my office looking like she'd seen a ghost. "You need to come to the front desk right now," she said. "Why? What's going on?" "It's your dad. He's firing people." I swear my brain short-circuited. "What do you mean, he's firing people?" "Employees." "Yes," she said, her eyes wide. He walked in, said he was taking over, and started telling people to pack their things. I stood up so fast my chair nearly tipped over. When I got to the front, there was my dad, standing in the reception area like he owned the place, explaining to one of my dispatchers that his services were no longer needed. 2 drivers were standing there, keys in hand, looking completely bewildered. "What the hell are you doing?" I said, walking straight up to him. He didn't even bat an eye. "I'm fixing things. Your company needs new leadership. Too much inefficiency. I'm stepping in to clean house." I just stared at him, waiting for a punchline that never came. "You're doing what now?" "I'm unemployed since we sold the store, and I'm your father." "It makes sense. I'll take over operations, run things more efficiently, and you can focus on the big picture. You can put me on the payroll with a decent salary for the work, of course." Honestly, I thought I'd misheard him. "You want me to pay you to run my company?" "The company I built from the ground up while you were telling me it was a waste of time." He shrugged as if the request were perfectly reasonable. "Families help each other. You've got too much on your plate, and I have experience running a business." I couldn't help it. I laughed. Managing a small neighborhood hardware store is not the same as running a logistics firm with multiple warehouses, time-sensitive contracts, and over 100 employees. That's when he played the oldest card in his deck. "I'm your father." I took a step closer and kept my voice steady. "Yes, and I'm your son, the one who doesn't need you marching in here trying to play CEO of a business you know nothing about. You have no authority here, and you are not going to mess with people's jobs because you're bored and looking for something to do." He looked offended, as if I'd just spit in his face. "Don't talk to me like that. I'm trying to help you." I turned to Monica. "No one is fired. Everyone get back to work." Then I looked back at him. "You need to leave now." This is ridiculous, he shot back. You're making a mistake. I can make this company better. No, I said. You'd run it into the ground, just like Logan's projects. You are not new leadership. You are not even on the payroll. You're a visitor in this building, and I'm telling you your visit is over. We stood there for a second, not blinking. Finally, he huffed, mumbled something about how I'd regret this, and stormed out. Monica waited until the door closed before saying, "That was surreal." "Yeah," I replied, "and something tells me it's only the beginning." It turned out I was right, and the beginning didn't take long. 2 weeks after my dad's attempted coup at my company, I got a text from my cousin, Bryce. "Hey man, did you hear about Logan and that Trent guy?" I hadn't, and honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to, but I asked anyway. Bryce sent a voice note instead of typing, which is never a good sign. Apparently, Trent, the so-called partner in Logan's grand scheme, had vanished. He'd taken all the equipment they'd bought, emptied the business bank account, and just disappeared. No calls, no emails, just gone. They even filed a police report, but the money was already gone, and Trent was nowhere to be found. Logan was left holding a lease on a rented office, a few unpaid invoices, and absolutely no money to operate. By the end of the week, the money from the store was completely gone. The business was dead before it ever really started. My parents were left with no store, no income, and a son they viewed as the victim of a betrayal, because apparently, Trent was the only irresponsible one in the story. I figured that for once. Maybe they'd take a step back, own their mistake, and figure out how to recover without dragging me into it. But no, that would have required some self-awareness. Instead, they went in the complete opposite direction. One Monday morning, I got a call from a supplier we've worked with for years. He said, "So, I met your executive director of operations last week. Really interesting guy. Said you guys are planning a big expansion." I was silent for a second. "My what?" "Your executive director of operations. Your dad, right?" I just stood there, staring at my phone as if it could explain itself. My father was apparently going around introducing himself as my executive director of operations, a position that doesn't exist and one I certainly never gave him. And it got worse. That Friday, one of my sales reps told me she'd run into Logan at a networking event downtown. He was introducing himself as the head of business development for my company, handing out cheap business cards with my company logo, his name underneath it, and a Gmail address. A Gmail address. It was like they'd decided, well, we lost the store, so now we'll just live off Cameron's company. They started showing up at industry events they weren't even invited to. I heard from a client that my executives, meaning my dad and Logan, were being very aggressive in pitching them on joint venture opportunities one had never approved. I wanted to blow everything up right then and there, but I also knew a public scene would just give them ammunition to play the family drama card. So, I took a deep breath and decided to handle it a different way. I started documenting everything. Step 1, photos. I quietly asked a couple of managers to snap pictures whenever they saw my dad or Logan at events, talking to clients, or handing out their fake business cards. I also told my staff to collect as many of the cards as they could. One of them even brought me a whole stack Logan had left on a table at a Chamber of Commerce luncheon. Step 2, witnesses. Every time they claimed a title in my company, I asked anyone who heard the claim to send me an email with exactly what was said, word for word if possible. My inbox filled up very quickly. Step 3, the digital trail. I checked LinkedIn. Sure enough, my dad had updated his profile to Executive Director of Operations at my company, with a start date that was exactly 1 week after the store was sold. Logan's was even better. He listed himself as Head of Business Development and claimed to have landed several high-value contracts in the role. I was literally getting jaw pain from clenching my teeth. All this time, I didn't say a word to them. Not a text, not a call, nothing. I wanted them to keep going, to dig the hole so deep they couldn't possibly climb out when I finally dropped the hammer. It was strange. Part of me was furious, obviously, but another part was almost impressed by how far they were willing to push this delusion. My dad even started wearing suits everywhere, as if he were in a permanent board meeting. Logan bought one of those cheap leather briefcases he carried around, probably with nothing inside but blank paper. I just kept my head down and continued gathering evidence. I knew it was only a matter of time before they crossed a line they couldn't even try to explain away, and I didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, I was in the middle of a call with a supplier when my phone started buzzing nonstop. First, a text from Karen, my top account manager. Your dad and Logan are in the lobby with the Westmore client. Already telling her about our expansion plans. That was enough for me to cut off the call mid-sentence. The Westmore contract is one of our biggest, the kind you never mess with. If they were in the building, playing executives again, this was no longer just annoying. It was dangerous. I bolted out of my office and took the stairs down. And sure enough, there they were. My dad in one of his serious businessman suits, Logan clutching his fake leather briefcase like it was a golden ticket. The Westmore representative, Rachel, looked polite but confused, glancing between them and the receptionist as if trying to figure out who these people were. I stepped directly between them and the client. Rachel, great to see you. Let's get settled in the conference room, I said, keeping my voice calm. My dad cut her off before she could move. We were just telling Rachel about the strategic partnerships we're developing for the company. I turned to him and looked him dead in the eye. You aren't developing anything for my company. I made sure Rachel heard it clearly. Let's go, Rachel, I repeated, gesturing her down the hall. She gave me a small, knowing smile, as if she understood the situation and followed me out of earshot. Once she was settled in the conference room with a coffee, I immediately went back to them. You too, I started, but my dad's expression had shifted from smug to offended. That's no way to treat your leadership. You are not my leadership. You're not even employees. You are trespassing, I added. Logan tried to smooth things over. Cameron, relax. We were just networking. Networking with my clients without my permission is called interference, I said coldly. And you've already been asked to stop multiple times. I signaled to the receptionist. Please call security. That immediately got my dad's attention. You wouldn't dare. Watch me, I replied. 2 security guards came over. They aren't particularly imposing, but they have that presence that makes you think twice. Please escort these gentlemen out and inform them they are not permitted to return without my written permission, I told them. My father started in with his, I'm your father, routine, but I didn't even react. Logan mumbled something about me being ungrateful as they were walked to the exit. I went straight back to my office. I shut the door and called Monica, my operations manager. Get all department heads in the main conference room in 20 minutes, I told her. We're putting an end to this. When everyone was assembled, I stood at the front of the room and didn't mince words. I want to be perfectly clear. You've all seen my father and brother around here lately. They are not employed here. They have no authority. They do not represent this company in any capacity. If you see them attempting to interact with clients, vendors, or staff, you direct them to me immediately and do not engage with them. I saw several looks of relief. Clearly, some people had been wondering how long they'd have to put up with this circus. And if they try to tell you otherwise, I added, you can tell them the owner has already ordered them to stop. After the meeting, I went right back to my office and sent 2 emails, one to my lawyer and one to my parents and Logan. The message to them was short and brutal. Subject, cease and desist. Effective immediately, you are to cease and desist from representing yourselves as employees, executives, or representatives of my company. You have no authority to speak to clients, vendors, or employees on behalf of the company. Any further misrepresentation will result in legal action. Consider this your final warning. I CC'd my lawyer on it so they would know I wasn't bluffing. About an hour later, I got the first response, a voicemail from my dad. His voice was strained, like he was holding back a yell. I cannot believe you would humiliate me like that in front of important people. I am your father. I was only trying to help, and you made me look like a fool. 5 minutes later, Logan texted. You didn't have to go nuclear. We're just trying to grow the business. I didn't reply to either of them. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and started organizing the evidence I'd collected, photos from events, screenshots of their LinkedIn profiles with the fake titles, copies of the business cards, and witness emails from clients and staff. The Westmore incident had just given me a golden piece of evidence, their active misrepresentation to one of our biggest accounts. What really stuck with me was how calm Rachel from Westmore had been when I intervened. She had been polite, but her body language had already been screaming discomfort. If I hadn't come down when I did, who knows what absurd promises they might have made to her. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. By the time I closed my laptop, I had decided what came next. I'd given them multiple warnings, and they clearly had no intention of stopping. They were using my company's name and reputation as a free resource to exploit. This wasn't family, it was theft. And if they wanted to keep playing the "we're just trying to help" card, fine. I was about to show them what my help looked like, in the form of an official legal filing with their names on it. The very next morning, I called my lawyer, Henry. We'd worked together before on a vendor dispute a few years back, and I knew he didn't sugarcoat things. I told him I needed to come in person, and that I was bringing documentation. He had me in his office by 10 a.m. When I walked in, I put my laptop on the table and pulled out a folder so thick it could barely close. "Is this everything?" Henry asked, raising an eyebrow. "This is everything," I said. "Photos, fake business cards, LinkedIn captures, client emails, staff testimony, and the cherry on top, what happened with Westmore yesterday." He leaned back in his chair and started flipping through the folder. "So they're representing themselves as company executives with no official position or agreement in place." "Yes, to clients, vendors, and total strangers at networking events. And they've ignored all verbal and written warnings to stop." Henry closed the folder. "You have an open and shut case here. Misrepresentation, potential fraud, and clear-cut trespassing. If they're approaching people with false titles and promising business deals, that's a legal nightmare," he added. "Exactly," I replied. "And if I don't put a stop to it now, it's only a matter of time before they sabotage a contract I can't replace." "All right," he said, pulling the folder back toward him. "Here's the plan. We file for an injunction to bar them from using the company name, branding, or claiming any association. In parallel, we file a suit for damages and legal fees. With your documentation, a judge should move on this quickly." "Do it," I said, without a trace of hesitation. We spent the next hour going over every piece of evidence, making sure the timeline was airtight. Henry had me sign a stack of papers, and by the time I left his office, the process was in motion. It was like flipping a switch. This was no longer a family drama. It was a business dispute, now in the hands of the legal system. That afternoon, right after their stunt in the lobby, I called an emergency meeting with HR and security. From this moment on, I told them, my father and brother are banned from all company properties. No exceptions. If they show up, you call me and security immediately, and if they refuse to leave, we call the police. We had a formal no trespass notice delivered to them that same day, so there was no room for "we didn't know." Afterward, HR updated the official visitor list to flag their names. Security printed out their photos and posted them at the guard station. It felt harsh, but I knew I couldn't underestimate how far they'd push if I left any loophole. The lawsuit was filed. Henry sent me a copy with the court stamp as proof. That evening, they were officially served. I know because my phone exploded. First, a text from Logan. "Seriously? You're suing your own family over this?" Then a call from my dad, which went straight to voicemail. "I can't believe you're dragging us to court over something that could have been handled with a conversation. You've lost all respect for me." But the real fireworks happened the next morning when my mom showed up at my office unannounced. She blew past the front desk like she owned the place and walked right into my office, slamming the door behind her. "How could you do this to your own family?" she demanded, arms crossed as if she'd caught me stealing. I remained seated. Let's be clear. They were impersonating executives at my company, interfering with clients, and ignored every warning to stop. "They were just trying to help," she shot back. "No," I said. "They were using my company's name to make themselves feel important. That's not helping. That's endangering my reputation, my contracts, and my employees' jobs." Her voice took on that guilt-tripping tone I knew all too well. "We're a family. Your profits are our profits. We supported you your whole life." I actually laughed at that. "Supported me? When I started this company, you told me it was too risky and that I was wasting my time. You've supported Logan his whole life, not me. And now he's dragged Dad into this mess, and you're all shocked that I refuse to play along." Her face hardened. "You've changed. The money has made you cold." "No," I said, leaning forward. "The money has made me responsible. I have over 150 people who count on me to protect this business. That's my job. And protecting my company comes before protecting your feelings." For a second, she said nothing. Then she delivered the low blow. "Your grandmother would be ashamed of you." I kept my voice even. "My grandmother would be ashamed of anyone who pretends to be something they're not, and puts other people's livelihoods at risk to feed their ego. That shut her up for a moment. She muttered something about me needing to think about what kind of man I wanted to be, then stormed out. 2 days later, Henry called. They've lawyered up, but their guy has already reached out to talk about a settlement. That's a good sign. They know they don't have a leg to stand on. Good, I said. But I'm not backing down until the deal includes a formal agreement that they stop using my name, my company's name, and stop showing up on my properties. That's exactly what we're going to demand, Henry replied. That weekend, I was at home reviewing warehouse reports when I got a text from Rachel at Westmore, the same client they had cornered in the lobby. Just wanted to say I appreciated how you handled that situation. Seeing you take control and protect your clients actually made me feel even more confident in your company. I smiled. At least something good had come out of the chaos. The people who mattered saw where my priorities were. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. I wasn't nervous. Between the paper trail, the witnesses, and their own LinkedIn profiles, the case was airtight. They thought I was bluffing when I told them to stop. They were about to find out that when I say I'm done, I really mean it. The court date arrived faster than I expected. It was 3 weeks of legal silence on their end. No official filings, no formal responses, aside from a few weak settlement offers that basically amounted to, "We'll stop if you pay us." Other than that, radio silence. When we walked into the courtroom, they were already there with their lawyer, a guy who looked like he'd been hired off the internet in a hurry. My dad wouldn't look at me. Logan kept fiddling with his phone as if waiting for a magical notification to save him. My mom wasn't there, which probably meant she didn't want to see the verdict firsthand. It didn't take long. Henry laid out the timeline like a rap sheet. Dates, photos, copies of the fake business cards, client statements, and screenshots of their LinkedIn titles. The judge flipped through the file, without even hiding her lack of impression. Their lawyer tried to argue they were just trying to help and didn't know they weren't allowed to use the company name. The judge cut him off flat. Ignorance of the law is not a defense, especially when you received multiple, clear warnings to cease. When she was done, it was over. Preliminary injunction granted. They were forbidden from any direct or indirect representation as being part of my company. Legal fees and damages were reserved pending full resolution of the case. A week later, their lawyer called Henry. They wanted to settle. We agreed to a consent order that made the injunction permanent and required them to pay my legal fees, plus a damages settlement that made Logan's jaw drop. I didn't even have to say anything. I just walked out of the courthouse with Henry, feeling that mix of calm and satisfaction you get when someone finally runs out of excuses. 2 days later, the fallout began. First, the news got around the local business community. The local Chamber of Commerce removed their so-called consulting LLC from its website that same week. A few vendors who had been giving them the time of day stopped returning their calls. The small network, they thought they had vanished. Then came the money problems. Without the store, they had no steady income. Logan's sham business had eaten the sale money, and my dad's ego meant he wasn't about to take a regular job stocking shelves or making deliveries. The bills started piling up. I heard about it from my cousin Bryce, who runs a small construction crew. He told me they had called him asking if he had any management-level positions open, claiming they had skills to offer. He told them the truth. After what they'd pulled, no one in town was going to trust them with anything more complicated than a panini press. By the end of the month, they were already behind on their mortgage payments. I knew because my mom posted one of those cryptic Facebook statuses about how hard times show you who your real family is. Translation: we need money, but we want to make it sound like a loyalty test. And sure enough, they showed up at my house the following Saturday. I opened the door to find my dad on the porch, Logan 2 steps behind him. They both looked exhausted. My dad was in a wrinkled polo shirt that hadn't seen an iron since the Bush administration, and Logan looked like he'd been sleeping in his clothes. My dad cleared his throat. "We need to talk." I leaned against the doorframe. "About what?" "How I can update my LinkedIn title to Son of the Year." He ignored the jab. "We're in a bad spot. The bank is threatening to foreclose. We need some help to get through the next few months." I put on my most thoughtful expression. "Oh, I'd love to help, but I'm trying to stay in character as that greedy guy you said I was. Wouldn't want to ruin my image, you know?" Logan stepped forward. "Come on, man. It's not like we weren't ever there for you." I laughed out loud. "When exactly? When you tried to fire my employees, Or when you handed my client a fake business card? Or maybe it was when you called me greedy because I wouldn't let you have half the money from the store? My dad's jaw tightened. We're family. You can't just let us fail like this. Funny, I replied, because when you were running around town telling everyone you were my boss, I don't remember you worrying about how that would make me or my employees fail. So yes, I can let you fail. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Logan mumbled something about burning bridges, and I nodded. Exactly. Sometimes you have to burn the bridge to make sure no one brings their circus across it again. I stepped back and pointed toward the driveway. This conversation is over. I have things to do, like run the company you failed to destroy. Then I closed the door in their faces. Bryce called me that night, laughing. You're not going to believe this, he said. After you kicked them out, they called Aunt Rachel to see if they could crash at her place. She said no and told them exactly why. Apparently, she was done with their nonsense too. In fact, Bryce had told the entire extended family exactly what had happened. The fake titles, the lawsuit, everything. So it wasn't just me closing the door on them anymore. Every cousin, aunt, and uncle knew the truth. Nobody wanted to be their backup plan. Within a week, they were completely isolated. No jobs, no family couch to sleep on, no friends returning their calls. Just the bank breathing down their necks and the reality that their grand plan had finally, definitively collapsed. I'd like to say I felt bad, but the truth is, I slept better than I had in months. A couple of months later, Bryce sent me a picture of my parents' house with a notice of default taped to the front door. They were already behind before they even came to me for help, so the process was quick. By the end of the year, the bank had repossessed the house. When the sheriff's notice arrived, they still had no plan. Nowhere to go, no one willing to take them in. On eviction day, movers were out front, carrying furniture to the curb while my dad argued with them as if it would change anything. Logan was pacing the yard, telling anyone who would listen that the system had failed him. They tried one last time, a long, dramatic email about restoring the family and how I could redeem myself by helping them start over. I replied with a single sentence, just staying in character as the greedy one. Remember? Bryce told me they tried to crash with other relatives, but no one would take them. The truth of what had really happened had spread through the family, thanks to Bryce. And suddenly, every spare couch was already taken. Logan ended up taking a low-level retail job he used to mock. My dad took odd jobs where no one cared about his management experience. My mom kept a low profile, pretending not to recognize anyone when she went out. As for me, my business kept growing. My life stayed calm, drama-free, and I told myself just one thing. Comment. I often think about the true meaning of family support. Setting boundaries is not about pushing people away, but about protecting your own peace and self-respect. Safeguarding the life you've worked hard to create is a profound act of responsibility. True kindness sometimes means stepping back so others can learn to stand on their own. The hardest choices often lead to the quietest and most meaningful rewards. Sometimes, choosing your peace requires letting go of chaos, even when that chaos is familiar. Your worth is not measured by how much you are willing to endure for others. Healing truly begins when you affirm that you deserve a safe and stable environment. I hope you always find the strength to honor your own journey and efforts. Remember that you are allowed to be the guardian of your own peace. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.